Before the first pyramid cast its shadow over the desert, before Atlantis rose and fell beneath the waves, there was another world, older, deeper, and stranger. A civilization said to have walked among the gods, shaping continents and charting the stars long before the first human kingdom appeared. They called themselves the Lemurians, the forgotten race of the dawn. Some believe they were myth, others claim they were divine, but buried beneath the oceans and mountains are fragments of a truth that is far more unnerving than the legends. This is not just a story of a lost civilization. It is the tale of a forgotten epoch when humanity was not the only dominant species on Earth. For centuries, explorers spoke of strange ruins scattered across the Indian and Pacific Oceans, structures carved with symbols not belonging to any known ancient culture. These whispers led many to a theory that an entire supercontinent once stretched between Asia and Africa, home to an advanced species who vanished without a trace. Mainstream scholars dismissed the idea, but then came the discoveries: gigantic submerged platforms near India, cyclopean stone blocks off the coast of Japan, and inscriptions older than any known human script, hinting at a civilization that predated even Atlantis.
But the most chilling detail comes not from ruins, but from myth. Nearly every ancient culture across the Indian Ocean speaks of tall, luminous beings who emerged from the sea in humanity's earliest days. The Tamil called them the Kumari. The Indonesians spoke of the Dewata. Even early Polynesians remembered the Atua, godlike ancestors from a drowned land. Were these stories metaphorical, or memories of a real race now erased from the world? In this episode, we journey into the heart of Lemuria to learn who the Lemurians truly were, how they rose, how they fell, and how their echoes still shape the world today. To understand Lemuria, we must first understand its world. Tens of thousands of years before recorded history, Earth was a very different planet. Sea levels were lower, continents were broader, and entire land masses now underwater were once vibrant with life. In this primeval world, the Lemurians built cities of stone and crystal, harnessing geothermal energy from the Earth's crust. Their architecture defied modern explanation: spiral towers aligned with magnetic currents, hall-like observatories capable of tracking star movements thousands of years in advance, and monoliths carved with precision that even today remains nearly impossible.
Unlike humans, whose civilizations rose gradually, the Lemurians seem to appear suddenly in the archaeological record, fully developed, technologically mature, and architecturally bold. Some researchers believe they were not entirely human. Their skeletal remains, rare and controversial, suggest a species taller, more robust, and neurologically distinct, possessing an expanded cranial capacity. Whether they evolved naturally or were something else entirely remains one of history's most fiercely debated questions. But one thing is certain: the Lemurians were far more advanced than their neighbors.
The Lemurians were master engineers of water. While the Egyptians mastered stone and the Sumerians mastered writing, Lemuria mastered the ocean. Their cities were ringed with hydrochannels designed to move seawater with astonishing precision. Some structures appear engineered to harness tidal forces, converting the crash of waves into mechanical energy. Others served as aquaculture systems, massive grids where marine life was cultivated on a scale unimaginable for antiquity.
The ocean was not just their home, it was their power source.
Legends say the Lemurians possessed an unusual relationship with nature, one that bordered on mystical. They were said to communicate with marine creatures, predict storms with uncanny accuracy, and navigate oceans without the stars. Modern science interprets these claims as advanced knowledge of bioacoustics, meteorology, and geomagnetism. But ancient texts describe something stranger: beings who could hear the ocean's memory and speak the language of waves. Whether poetic or literal, this connection to nature made Lemuria unlike any other civilization.
But even the greatest empires have enemies. For the Lemurians, the threat did not come from Earth, but from the sky. Oral traditions across Southeast Asia speak of a burning star that appeared without warning, growing larger each night until it became a crimson sun above the ocean. Some believe this was a comet or asteroid. Others think it may have been a supervolcanic eruption reflected in the sky. Whatever it was, it triggered a chain reaction that would rewrite the planet.
The burning star was only the beginning. Tremors shook the continent, splitting the land along fault lines that had lain dormant for millennia. Volcanoes erupted across the horizon. Ocean levels rose with terrifying speed, pushing walls of water inland. In ancient myths, this was the Great Sundering, the night the sea devoured the earth. For modern geologists, it corresponds eerily to several catastrophic events: the Toba supervolcano, the Younger Dryas impacts, and sudden glacial melts. Lemuria faced all of them at once.
As the continent cracked apart, the Lemurians fought against annihilation with everything they had. Historical fragments describe enormous evacuation platforms, stones so massive they could only have been moved with lost techniques. Others speak of crystalline towers designed to stabilize seismic energy, glowing brighter as the earth tore itself apart. But against a world-ending storm of fire and water, even their brilliance was not enough. Lemuria began to sink, and the age of the forgotten race came to a close.
When the first cities collapsed beneath the rising seas, the Lemurians fled inland, seeking refuge on fragmenting highlands that would one day become Madagascar, Sri Lanka, Sumatra, and Australia. But survival came at a terrible cost. Their once unified empire shattered into isolated enclaves, each struggling against the violent storms that tore the sky apart. Inscriptions recovered from submerged ruins describe the long night, a period when ash eclipsed the sun, when crops withered, and when the ocean swallowed entire valleys in a single tide. The world was ending, piece by piece, and the Lemurians knew it.
But even in ruin, the Lemurians displayed extraordinary resilience. Their last surviving engineers constructed colossal memory vaults, sealed chambers designed to preserve their knowledge for future ages. Some were built deep inside mountains, others hidden beneath coral reefs that would one day encase them like time capsules. These vaults contained advanced astronomical charts, detailed biology records, and mineralogical data far beyond what humans would rediscover for tens of thousands of years. It was as if they knew humanity would inherit the world and wanted to leave behind a warning.
But their greatest legacy would not be physical at all. It would be genetic. Legends across Polynesia, Africa, and India describe a time when the sea people took human wives and husbands, creating lineages blessed with knowledge of the sky and sea. Modern genetic studies reveal something unusual: shared markers between populations separated by oceans, far older than human migration models predict. Could these ancient stories represent real interbreeding between Lemurians and early Homo sapiens? If so, their blood may still flow in millions today.
As the destruction intensified, Lemurian culture underwent a profound transformation. The scientific clarity that defined their golden age gave way to a new, desperate spirituality. Their final hymns speak of a return to the deep, a belief that their souls were born from the ocean and would one day return to it. Some texts even describe rituals meant to call the waters home, as if embracing the very force that was destroying them. Whether symbolic or literal, these rituals marked the twilight of their civilization. Still, not all accepted fate. A faction of Lemurian scholars believed their continent could be saved. They built enormous resonance pillars, gigantic obelisks designed to stabilize tectonic vibrations. These structures emitted deep harmonic tones that echoed for miles, creating oscillations that they hoped would counteract the planet's violent shifts. Such technology borders on unimaginable today, yet similar sonic resonance techniques appear in ruins from Egypt to Bali. Could these be remnants of Lemurian influence, scattered by survivors seeking a new home? But despite their brilliance, the resonance pillars were ultimately overwhelmed. The Earth convulsed with unstoppable force, splitting the continent into 4 massive fragments. Entire cities sank within minutes. Mountains collapsed. Rivers became oceans. The Lemurians realized that their battle was not against a single disaster, but against the planet itself, reshaping in ways beyond comprehension. For the first time in their long history, they faced extinction.
As the end drew near, the Lemurians constructed their final masterpiece, the Ark of the Deep. Not a ship, but a floating fortress built of stone-light composites and buoyant crystal structures. It was designed to ride the chaos of the ocean like a drifting city. According to myth, it carried the last counsel of Lemurian sages, along with fragments of their libraries and seed vaults meant to restore life after the chaos. Some believe the Ark later reached India or Polynesia, becoming the origin of flood myths worldwide. But even the Ark could not escape the final blow. The ocean convulsed with a mega tsunami hundreds of meters high. Witnesses described the horizon rising like a living wall. When it struck, the Ark was lifted into the air and hurled across the sea. Some accounts claim it shattered upon impact. Others say fragments drifted for centuries, carrying survivors to distant lands. What is known for certain is that the Ark was never found, and its knowledge, if it survived, remains hidden to this day. As Lemuria vanished beneath the ocean, a few survivors reached the scattered islands of the Indian and Pacific Oceans. These refugees carried fragments of their culture, astronomy, navigation, agriculture, and sacred symbols, which blended with the societies they encountered. Over time, these hybrid cultures evolved into the Polynesians, the Dravidians, the early Indonesians, and even parts of Aboriginal Australia. The fingerprints of Lemuria can still be seen in star maps, myths of ocean gods, and ancient languages separated by thousands of miles. But the most haunting part of the Lemurian legacy lies beneath the waves. Vast ruins, too regular to be natural, dot the ocean floor from India to Easter Island. Some lie beneath silt. Others remain eerily intact, like frozen memories of a world torn apart. Divers describe a silence unlike any other, as though the ocean itself remembers what was lost. These ruins raise a staggering question. If Lemuria truly existed, what else remains hidden, waiting to be discovered? And could the secrets of a vanished world reshape our understanding of human history forever? Deep beneath the drowned avenues of old Lemuria, Leora and the expedition discovered a vaulted hall carved from shimmering blue basalt. Every step they took sent waves of sound spiraling across the chamber, as if the walls themselves were whispering back. Symbols of the luminal pantheon, spirals of light, interlocking suns, and diamond-shaped runes were etched into every surface, glowing faintly as if awakening from a long sleep. When Leora placed her hand on a mural showing the fall of the Lemurian gods, an echo rose through the room, not a sound, but a memory, replaying itself as a shimmer in the air. The Lemurians fleeing burning seas, towers collapsing in white fire. The gods, once radiant, now shadows, pulling the world into ruin. It was the first proof the scholars had ever found that the legends were not metaphors, but historical record.
As the echoes faded, ghostly figures emerged, thin silhouettes of Lemurian priests, their forms flickering like candlelight beneath the waves. They spoke in a melodic but broken tongue, repeating a prophecy known as the Tide of Unmaking. According to them, the gods of Lemuria had not merely died, they had decayed into something monstrous, reborn as parasitic guardians, feeding on the planet's life force. These prophets had foreseen the rise of the second tides, a future calamity mirroring the collapse of their civilization. Their last warning was chilling. The gods did not fall. They sank, and from the abyss they rise again.
The chamber connected to a colossal structure further below, a spiraling staircase descending into a cylindrical shaft that seemed to stretch endlessly downward. At the bottom rested a circular stone seal, etched with a depiction of a sleeping god entwined with a serpent-like leviathan. The seal radiated heat, though the surrounding water was icy cold. Leora noted the runes around it matched descriptions from forbidden Lemurian texts. This was the gate of the abyssal host, the prison of the fallen gods. No expedition in history had ever come this close. But the seal was cracked, cracks that looked recent. Something beneath it had moved.
As sensors scanned the seal, a low vibration pulsed through the water, steady, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. A distortion rippled across their equipment displays, forming a single, unexplainable signature, a pulse that seemed to respond to sound. When Leora whispered experimentally, the pulse quickened. When one of the divers panicked, shouting through his comms, the entire structure trembled. They realized with horror that the imprisoned entity was resonant, feeding on sound waves, and the seal's cracks meant the barrier was weakening. Whatever slept below was listening, waking, and hungry. Leora discovered a secondary inscription along the seal's rim, a carved symbol resembling a three-eyed sun partially eclipsed by darkness. Her translator identified it as the crest of Nevrex, the most feared of the fallen gods, the devourer of currents, the deity believed to have consumed entire islands during the cataclysm. Ancient sources described Nevrex as neither benevolent nor malevolent, but a cosmic force, one that required eternal containment. If the seal of Nevrex was failing, it meant the oldest Lemurian threat was returning. Leora's voice trembled as she whispered, This is not a ruin. It's a warning sign." Without warning, the chamber convulsed. Sediment erupted from the floor like smoke, and a shock wave threw the divers into the walls. The seal split further, this time visibly, and an enormous plume of superheated water blasted upward. It was as if the ocean itself had coughed.
Leora clutched a pillar to stay upright, watching in terror as molten light leaked from the cracks like magma rising under pressure. Their timer alarms blared. This was no natural quake. This was an awakening.
The team fled into a narrow corridor lined with hexagonal stone tiles. The place resembled a ceremonial path designed to lead deeper into the complex. Its walls displayed scenes of chained gods being dragged into the abyss by Lemurian priest kings wielding crystalline staves. The message was unmistakable. The Lemurians had not worshipped their gods, they had subjugated them. And as Leora's flashlight swept across a final mural, she saw it. The priest kings sealing the gods beneath the ocean, using a weapon that looked eerily like a modern energy reactor. Lemuria had possessed technology far beyond anything previously imagined.
At the corridor's end stood a towering crystal spire, fractured but still glowing deep blue. It hummed in harmonic rhythms, and Leora recognized it immediately. A conduit core, a power battery believed lost forever after Lemuria's fall. The conduits were rumored to draw energy from planetary resonance, using the Earth's own vibrations to sustain impossible feats. But this one was unstable. Its energy flickered erratically, causing the surrounding walls to pulse like living tissue. Even worse, the conduit appeared connected to the seal above. If it failed entirely, the prison would open. The expedition argued over what to do. Some insisted they should leave immediately and inform the world. Others demanded they attempt to repair the conduit, though no one truly understood Lemurian engineering. Leora knew the truth. If they fled, the world might not have long. But if they intervened, they risked triggering the very disaster they feared. She stared at the conduit core, its rhythms accelerating, pulsing like a countdown, and realized that either choice could doom millions. The ocean was no longer silent. It was a ticking clock.
Then the sound came, the unmistakable thump, thump, thump of something colossal beating against the walls of its ancient prison. The water vibrated violently, knocking equipment from the divers' belts. The conduit flickered, the seal groaned, and far below, in the abyss where light had never existed, a massive silhouette shifted. The fallen god Nevrix was no longer asleep. It was rising, and the ocean trembled at its return. Leora whispered into her recorder, voice shaking. "If this recording is found, know that Lemuria did not fall because of myth. It fell because it angered something that should never be awakened." The chamber trembled like a living thing as the rhythmic pounding intensified. Dust and ancient fragments drifted through the water like snow, swirling around the expedition team. Leora steadied herself against a pillar and realized the architecture itself, stone, metal, and crystalline veins, was responding to the entity below. Panels opened along the walls, revealing dormant machinery awakening after millennia of silence. Patterns of luminescent script ignited across the floor, forming a geometric map pointing toward the abyss. The Lemurians had prepared for this moment. They had known the prison would eventually fail. The water pressure surged unpredictably, pulling and pushing like invisible tides. Equipment readings spiked into erratic chaos, temperature swings, gravitational distortions, magnetic anomalies. One diver shouted that the abyss below was widening, literally tearing open. Leora stared into the deep shaft beneath the seal and saw strands of black, shadow-like vapor rising. They looked like smoke, but moved like tentacles, each one withdrawing when illuminated. Whatever lay below was no longer contained. It was spilling into the world, molecule by molecule. Near the conduit core,
Leora noticed a new set of runes glowing faintly. They formed a circular diagram resembling interlocking gears, but the symbols represented time intervals, not machines. It was a time lock. The Lemurians had engineered the seal to weaken in cycles, forcing them to perform periodic rituals to sustain it. When their civilization collapsed, no one remained to maintain the cycle. Leora whispered bitterly, "We're 12,000 years late for the maintenance schedule." The conduit core pulsed, as if offended. A mathematician on the expedition deciphered part of the time lock's function. It relied on complex harmonic equations, blending mathematics with ritual, physics with emotion. The Lemurians had understood that reality could be influenced not only by energy, but by intention. But the equations were incomplete, fractured where history had broken. Without restoring the missing components, the seal would fail entirely. Leora stared at the mural showing the gods' imprisonment and realized something terrifying. The missing numbers had been carved onto a tablet, now lost somewhere in the ruins or the ocean floor beyond it. A thunderous sound, like a mountain cracking, echoed through the corridors as part of the seal ruptured. Superheated bubbles roared upward, scattering the team. Alarm screamed. One diver was thrown violently and vanished into a cloud of boiling silt. Leora shouted his name, but no answer came, only the distant roar from the abyss. The fallen god had made its first breach, and the ocean responded like a wounded beast.
Leora ordered an emergency beacon to be launched to the surface, a compressed data burst containing everything they'd discovered. But as the beacon ascended, the water darkened. A massive silhouette moved overhead, gliding with unnatural elegance. Its form was indistinguishable, but its presence dimmed the light. The beacon's signal flickered, disrupted by an electromagnetic pulse emitted from the creature's passing. The message never reached the surface.
The team retreated into a colossal chamber resembling an arena. Stone tiers rose like petrified waves. In the center stood a monolith covered in thousands of tiny carvings, each representing a Lemurian life lost during the first war against the gods. Leora knelt beside it and felt the weight of their desperation. This wasn't merely a ruin. This was a tomb, a monument, and a battlefield all at once. The fallen gods had been defeated here once before, and now they were returning to reclaim what they lost. As the water vibrated again, the carvings on the monolith emitted faint harmonic tones, not voices, resonances. When Leora touched the surface, she felt emotions not her own: fear, determination, sorrow, sacrifice. The monument stored the psychic echoes of Lemurian warriors who gave their lives binding the gods. Their final plea whispered through the chamber: "Hold the gate, or the world drowns in eternity." A spiral shaft led deeper still. Its walls were engraved with scenes not of battle, but of transformation. Lemurian gods, once radiant humanoid beings, twisted into monstrous forms under the weight of cosmic pressure and deep ocean isolation. Their minds broke, their divinity curdled. Leora realized the truth. The gods hadn't fallen from power, they had fallen into madness. The abyss had corrupted them into devourers. The shaft opened into a vast spherical chamber filled with floating crystals. These levitated despite the water, humming in layered harmonics that made the divers' suits shiver. In the center stood a pedestal with a fractured crown-like artifact, its prongs shaped like serpents.
Leora recognized it from ancient myths, the crown of the first priest-king, used to bend the will of gods. But the crown was broken, its power lost, and with it the last hope of dominion over the fallen gods. Behind the pedestal lay inscriptions describing the sacrament of dominion, the ritual used to bind gods. But half the text was eroded. The remaining half hinted that the ritual required not only power, but a chosen vessel, a mortal whose will was strong enough to channel cosmic resonance. Leora recoiled at the implication. The Lemurians hadn't commanded the gods from afar. They sacrificed their own to control them, a living anchor, a human lock. They reached the lowest tier of the chamber and found a gigantic open archway leading into a trench so deep their lights couldn't pierce it. Cold currents poured from the void like breath from a sleeping giant. Within that darkness, tiny lights flickered, blue, red, and white, moving like distant stars. Except stars don't blink in patterns. They blink to the rhythm of consciousness. Something enormous was watching them from below, something ancient, awake. A voice, not sound but thought, slid into their minds like a blade of ice. It spoke in perfect clarity, yet with the tone of something inhuman. "Return the crown, or drown in memory." Leora collapsed as visions flooded her eyes. Lemuria engulfed in storms of liquid fire, the ocean splitting like fabric, temples collapsing into chasms as titanic silhouettes, gods, struggled to break free. The fallen gods remembered their defeat, and they wanted retribution. A colossal heartbeat thundered through the trench. It shook the archway, cracked the chamber walls, and extinguished several of the crystal lights. The rhythmic pulse grew stronger, closer. The fallen god Nevrax was rising along the trench wall, its silhouette growing with each pulse. The water pressure spiked so violently that Leora's mask cracked. She patched it with trembling hands, her breath echoing like a trapped animal. Nevrax finally emerged into the faint glow of the expedition's lights. It was not a serpent, nor a humanoid, nor any recognizable life form. Its body seemed composed of shifting layers of matter, stone, water, shadow, and light, reconfiguring endlessly. Its 3 shining eyes stared with an intelligence sharpened by millennia of imprisonment. And when it inhaled, the water around it bent inward, distorting reality itself. The god of currents was alive.
The team fled back toward the conduit core chamber, pursued by distant tremors echoing through the corridors. But when they arrived, they discovered the core flickering violently, as though sensing Nevrax's awakening. Energy arcs lashed across the walls, vaporizing sediment. The conduit was feeding off raw cosmic force and losing control. Leora realized the conduit wasn't just a battery. It was the last chain holding Nevrax in the trench. A scientist analyzed the conduit and shouted the impossible truth. The Lemurians encoded a full algorithm into the crystal lattice. It was a self-correcting containment script. But now the algorithm was corrupt, segments missing or rewritten by time. To stop Nevrax, they needed to restore the missing segments manually. Leora stared at the swirling harmonics inside the crystal and knew this was beyond human understanding. Yet they had no choice but to try. They attempted to stabilize the conduit by aligning its harmonic nodes. For a moment, the chamber brightened and the energy calmed. But then Nevrax let out a low, resonant cry from the trench. The resulting shock shattered half the conduit's stabilizers, sending crystal shards spiraling like knives. One diver's suit was punctured. He vanished into the abyssal currents before anyone could grab him. Panic surged through the team. In the chaos, Leora noticed a small crystal shard glowing with a unique pattern. It contained a fragment of the original Lemurian code, an instruction sequence repeating endlessly. Bind through will. Anchor through sacrifice. The missing equation required something the expedition could not provide, a living vessel to stabilize the conduit. The Lemurians had required one, and now, so did the present.
The tremors escalated until parts of the chamber collapsed entirely. From the trench, multiple new lights flickered, other fallen gods stirring. Smaller serpent-like forms slithered along the trench walls, drawn by Nevrik's awakening. The abyssal host was rising. Leora whispered, "If they break the surface, the world ends." The water rumbled like an approaching storm. The team debated whether to flee or attempt the ritual. If they escaped now, they might reach the surface, but the gods would follow. If they stayed, someone had to serve as the anchor. Silence fell as Leora looked around at her colleagues, people she respected, people with families, people who had trusted her leadership. She felt the weight of an entire world pressing against her chest. Someone had to choose. Someone had to step forward. Leora stepped toward the conduit core, knowing the truth long before she spoke it. "I'm the one who can do it." She had studied Lemurian resonance her entire life. Her mind was trained in harmonic logic. If anyone could survive even a moment as the anchor, it was her. She removed her gloves, placed her hands on the core, and felt its energy pierce through her veins like liquid lightning. Pain exploded through her body.
The conduit reacted instantly. Its harmonics aligned through Leora's body, using her as a living stabilizer. The chamber brightened to near blinding turquoise. Her heartbeat synced with the conduit's rhythm, creating a counter-frequency that rippled through the abyss. For the first time since their arrival, Nevrex's silhouette recoiled. Leora screamed, but held firm.
Nevrax responded with a roar so powerful it shattered entire pillars. The shock wave slammed into the conduit, attempting to override Leora's resonance. Her mind filled with visions, dark oceans, drowned cities, endless hunger. She felt her identity dissolving into the harmonics. But she pushed back, channeling every memory, every hope, every fear into the core, and for a moment the god hesitated. The combined forces of Leora and Nevrex caused the water itself to distort. Time slowed. Light bent into spirals. The chamber flickered between past and present, showing Lemurian priest kings performing the ritual thousands of years earlier. Leora saw their faces, their resolve, their terror. She was sharing their burden, stepping into their place in history. Reality crumbled like thin glass around her.
The conduit's algorithms aligned perfectly. A final sequence illuminated within its core, indicating the ritual's success was near. All that remained was one last push, a surge of human will strong enough to complete the binding. Leora closed her eyes and surrendered every ounce of strength she had left. Her consciousness stretched into the abyss, touching the very essence of Nevrax, and she pushed.
A thunderous wail shook the trench as Nevrix was forced downward, its colossal form dragged back toward its prison by invisible chains of resonance. The smaller abyssal creatures shrieked and retreated. The water shook with primal agony. The god fought with every ounce of its ancient power, but the conduit's binding, enhanced by Leora's sacrifice, tightened like an unbreakable noose.
The conduit activated the last harmonic pulse. The broken seal reformed, pieces reversing through time, stitching themselves together. The cracks closed, the abyss dimmed. Nevrix's last roar faded into silence. The ocean's pressure normalized, the tremors ceased. The fallen god was sealed once more. But Leora's body had gone still, suspended in the water, glowing faintly. Her sacrifice had completed the cycle the Lemurians began. The surviving team members gathered around Leora's drifting form. She was peaceful, eyes closed, expression serene. The conduit now pulsed steadily, its energy stabilized. The chamber was quiet, almost reverent. One diver whispered, "She saved the world." Another added, "No one will ever know." But the ocean knew, and the ruins of Lemuria echoed with gratitude.
The expedition ascended through the dark waters toward the distant shimmer of the surface. Behind them, the Lemurian ruins grew dim, settling once more into eternal slumber. They carried with them the truth. Lost civilizations fell not by accident, but by warfare with gods born of the deep. As their boat pulled them from the sea, dawn broke across the horizon. The world was safe, for now, but beneath the waves, the fallen gods dreamed, and one day they may wake again.